Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness and possibly learn how to juggle at the same time, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Len Ferman. Len has been speaking professionally for 20 years. The primary content that he covers is business innovation, and he also does motivational speaking as well, or speaking that's actually motivational. He has spoken both nationally and internationally, and he's based out of Jacksonville, Florida. Len has a new book coming out called Innovating for Your Company's Future. Len, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Oh, we're glad to have you. I'd like to kick off the show by asking you if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your speaking business, the types of subjects that you cover, and how you help your listeners and viewers.
Well, I speak on a topic that's of importance to every company, and that is the innovation process. Innovation is critically important to the long-term survival of most organizations. There are some striking statistics that have come out in the last few years that the corporate lifespan, the average corporate lifespan now of an S&P 500 company is only 18 years. And so it's critical that all companies be innovating in order to set themselves up to continue to earn money in the future. So my speech is all about the basics of the innovation process as I developed it while I was at Bank of America, where I led the front end of the innovation process and was the head of ideation at Bank of America up until 2013. But my speech is very unique. I combine it with juggling. I'm actually a world juggling champion. Juggling is actually running while juggling.
Wow.
So in my speech, I teach the entire audience how to juggle, and then I relate the steps in learning how to juggle to the steps in the innovation process. They actually dovetail very well together.
Excellent. Now, one of the company that comes to mind as a primary example of a company known for innovation is Apple Computer, and much more so when the founder, Steve Jobs, was alive, but they're still pretty strong as well. One of the keys that I personally noticed with Apple is that they were not afraid to put themselves out of business, meaning their existing core products out of business. They did it with the iPod. They did it when the iPhone came out, and then they tried to do it again with the iPad. But what is your thoughts on that? That's a thought that I had. So you can either confirm it or shoot it to shreds.
Well, Apple is one of the poster childs for corporate innovation. They hit a point in 2011 where in the past 10 years prior to that, so from 2001 to 2011, 70% of all their revenue was coming from products that didn't exist before 2001, and they had been an established company around for 25 years. So that's really quite amazing that a company of that size could have 70% of their revenue coming from new products. And it goes back to one of the things you just said, that not being afraid to cannibalize existing businesses. That fear has led dominant companies to go to bankruptcy. A great example is Kodak. Kodak, as anybody who's over 30 years old remembers, a Kodak moment in their advertising. Kodak was the dominant photographic filmmaker in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They had upwards of a 90% market share at one point. They actually invented digital photography in the early 90s, but they chose not to pursue the development because they did not want to cannibalize the photographic film market, of which they were the dominant player. And then in 2012 or 13, they actually had to declare bankruptcy, and they're trying to come out of bankruptcy now. So that's really a tale of two companies there, Apple versus Kodak, one not being afraid to cannibalize, and the other, having that fear of cannibalization. So I think you hit a great point there, that companies they have to not be afraid to start over again, because the fact of the matter is that the way you make money today, the business as usual practices, it might be making a lot of money for you today and look like they're going to be successful forever. At some point, those business models are going to change. They're going to stop working to generate money, and new entrants that are meeting customer needs or taking advantage of new technologies and market conditions are eventually going to supersede those companies that are relying on those old business models. Another great example is what happened in the DVD rental market over the last decade. Just a few short years ago, we all rented videos by going to a Blockbuster retail store, and then Netflix usurped them with a superior model of renting the DVDs by mail. But then, just as you pointed out with Apple, Netflix has not been afraid to cannibalize their DVD by mail business with the video streaming business. Mm-hmm. Actually, not even having to rent a physical DVD anymore, going into the streaming business. So that business has seen three different business models, three different successful business models in just the last several years. And Netflix has been very nimble to be able to survive the new video streaming without being usurped by another company that could have come up and adopted video streaming.
Yeah, and then when Netflix has faced challenges and adversity, or when they've actually kind of blew up their implementation, they're very quick to recover and actually get on a new path, because remember they were going to split the DVD and have a different site for the instant delivery, the streaming market, and that blew up, so they reversed course and changed back.
Well, all companies have to have that nimbleness to be great innovators, and you have to not be afraid to pivot when you started going in the wrong direction. But one of the keys is to make sure you're constantly looking at the market, constantly understanding customer needs, generating ideas to satisfy those needs, and then constantly taking the top ideas into prototypes, so that you're constantly designing the future and kind of placing bets on which way the market might go, so that you're ready to ramp any of those up at any time if you see the conditions are right, or your tests start taking off. And I think companies like Netflix are excellent at doing that.
Mm-hmm. Something near and dear to my heart is the automotive industry. I grew up in the automotive industry. 3 years out of college, worked for an OEM and a tier supplier, and that's a perfect example of an industry that is really afraid to cannibalize their existing business. Now you have an upstart, they're really not an upstart anymore, but you've got Tesla that's coming in and disrupting that market with technology that really should have been out there years ago.
Well, the automotive industry is a great example of an industry that failed to understand and adapt to changing customer needs. And in the American auto industry, it really goes back to the early 1970s, when gas prices started really blowing up with the oil crisis in 1973. The automotive companies failed to start doing the research on coming up with more fuel-efficient cars, and the Japanese got ahead of us, and that's what really led to the Japanese making strong inroads in market share in the automotive market. And so, in no industry can you afford to ignore customer needs. You always have to. Great innovation always has a foundation with truly understanding customer needs and making sure that you're developing ideas to be able to implement solutions to meet those customer needs.
Len, could you provide the listeners with a business case study of a company that was challenged with innovation, where you were actually able to help them actually become more innovative?
Well, most of my experience has actually been working within the confines of Fortune 500 companies. I left the corporate world in 2013 to start my consulting firm, Ferman Innovation. So a lot of my experience goes back to banking and financial services. Again, I was the head of ideation, but the front end of innovation for Bank of America. And I think Bank of America presents a great example here. In the banking industry, it's a very difficult business because retail banking, no matter what banks seem to do, retail banks seem to be one of the companies that people love to hate. And a lot of people have had less than satisfactory experiences in bank branches. But what Bank of America did that was understand that as the internet was developing and mobile networks were developing, that the future with banking really relies in mobile and online banking. And so as part of my efforts, and Bank of America's a big company, so I obviously am not going to take all the credit for this, but part of my efforts have been to help develop concepts to improve online and mobile banking. And Bank of America has perhaps the best or maybe second best online and banking, mobile banking websites when you look at all of the national customer satisfaction surveys in mobile and online banking.
Okay, excellent. Now, one area, and I'm interested to get your feedback on this, one area where I thought the banking industry missed the boat was on instant cash transfers and instant payments. Think about PayPal and cash that's on your phone where you can actually send cash to someone. What do you think about that piece? And is that something that they missed, and if so, are they trying to close the gap on that?
Well, I can't speak to whether they're trying to close the gap on it right now, but in terms of whether it was a miss, I can tell you that in my experience at major banks, were looking at those types of person-to-person transfers, and the difference between sometimes a lot of startups and existing businesses that are regulated is just the risk parameters that they are constrained by. So I think in this case it's not really a great example to look at because large banks work under different types of regulatory risk constraints than internet startup companies. Okay.
All right, great. So let's talk a little bit about in terms of helping companies and individuals become more innovative. You have actually an innovative or creative strategy that you use during your live discussions to help people become more motivated or innovative. How do you do that?
Well, in my book, Innovating for Your Company's Future, I have developed a 6-step process to break through innovation. And this type of breakthrough innovation can be used by large companies, small companies, or even individual people who are looking to improve themselves either personally or professionally. The 6 steps are broken into 2 categories. There's the front end of innovation and the back end of innovation. In the front end of innovation, you're trying to identify what are those big ideas that you're going to place your bets on. And in the back end of innovation, you're taking the big idea and you're developing it. Now, in the front end of innovation, we have the first 3 steps of the process, which I call explore, ideate, and evaluate. So what you're doing in explore is you're understanding customer needs, you're understanding market conditions. That's really the most important step, and I think where most companies fail in the innovation process is they shortchange or they don't even do any customer research or market exploration. Once you've done a great job of really understanding your customer needs and market conditions, everything just flows from there. It becomes very easy, actually, to generate ideas when you've properly framed what the problems are that consumers have that you need to solve for them. So that's what the ideate phase is, generate ideas to solve for those customer needs. And then in the evaluate phase, the third phase of the front end of innovation, we're starting with maybe hundreds of ideas that you've developed through various idea brainstorming methods, idea generation methods, and then you're narrowing those down through some logical criteria and steps that I call evaluate, prioritize, and cultivate within that evaluate phase to narrow down to a few concepts that, again, you're going to place your big bets on. So, and this is where a lot of companies make a mistake too. They don't have a rigorous process for vetting out what are those ideas that they want to invest in, or when when a lot of individual companies, startup companies start out. One reason why you see such a high failure rate for startup companies is they have not properly vetted what is that big idea that they're going to invest all this money in before they get started. So this front end of innovation process is really critical. It all starts with identifying the customer needs. Now, once you've finished the front end of innovation, you know what it is that you want to invest in, whether, again, you're a startup or a large company. Then you have to go through the back end of innovation steps, what I call design, develop, and launch. And here, just like the first part of the front end of innovation was the most important step, here in the back end of innovation, the first step, the design phase, again, is the most important, because in the design phase, you're taking that one big idea that right now is may just be a simple statement, and you're building out what exactly is this product or service or program going to look like? What exactly are the consumer requirements for it? So there's, again, a healthy dose of customer research here. And what are your core competencies that you bring to the table that you're going to use to fulfill on that and create something? And then the most important part of the design process, you're actually testing it. You're testing it with low-cost prototypes. And prototypes can take on many different formats. It doesn't even have to be a working model. And it just has to be something where you can test the key revenue assumptions and determine that you truly have a business case before you go into actually developing, where you're actually building out the capabilities to deliver this, and then launching, where you're actually going out into the market. So that's the 6 steps that I cover in my book, and I teach them as part of my speaking program, and I relate them to the 6 steps in learning how to juggle. So it makes for a very entertaining, motivational, and informative speaking program.
Excellent. Now, if the listeners would like to learn more about innovation and how you can assist them with that, what's the best way to contact your organization?
Well, the easiest way to contact me is go to my website, fermaninnovation.com. That's Ferman, F-E-R-M-A-N, the word innovation.com. Or you can email me directly, Len, L-E-N, at fermaninnovation.com.
Okay, Len, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was extremely fascinating information that you shared with us.
Well, thanks. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to participate again.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.